안녕하세요. 여러분의 한국어 선생님 고빌리입니다. Some of the most common questions that I get on a regular basis are just, what's the meaning of this word? For example, what's the difference between this word and that word? Or how can I use this word in a sentence? And I'm here to tell you that you can find answers to all of these questions as well as a lot more using a free online dictionary such as Naver Dictionary. Now, this video is not sponsored. I feel like I should mention that. Naver doesn't even know that I'm making this video. But today I'm going to be showing you some special tricks that you can use, that I use, for how to get the most out of Naver Dictionary, so that you can not only look up the definition of words, but also find out how common those words are, as well as how to find the difference between words, and knowing how you can use the example sentences, how to find out the pronunciation of a word, as well as how to find grammar forms, dialect, slang, hanja, etymology, and a lot more. And you can find links to everything that I'm going to be mentioning in this video in the description box below. So the first tip I want to give you, the first thing I want to show you is just how you can look up a word. And we're going to start by opening Naver Dictionary. Now, this is what you might see when you go to Naver Dictionary for the first time, or you might see this page, which is the English-only version. Now, I use the full version, not the English version, but it does come with a lot of unnecessary stuff that you might not need yet. For example, if you were to search a word in the full version, it'll show you the definition in a bunch of other languages as well, including definitions of Korean words that are in Korean. So if you're just trying to do English only, well, I recommend using the English version for now, and it has mostly the same information. In fact, if you click the button that says 영어, meaning English, at the top of the full dictionary page, you can verify that yes, it does have, for the most part, all of the exact same information in both dictionaries. Both the English-only version as well as the full version have the same definitions, the same sample sentences, at least as far as English is concerned. Okay, so let's start with the front page. It should be pretty self-explanatory. You type in a word you want to know, you'll see that it suggests a few words and shows you the definition right away. You don't even have to push enter. But if you want more information, you can of course click on the word you want. And there on the page, it shows me the hanja that's used for it, as well as its definition. And then if you scroll down a bit more on the page, you'll also find example sentences that use that word, as well as even more example sentences, which are taken from native Korean speakers. And this section at the bottom is actually connected to a service called VLive, which is like a streaming platform for celebrities. So these sentences are used by real celebrities that contain the word that you're searching for. And this is probably the limit of what most people use the Korean dictionary for. But I want to show you in this video that there's so much more you can do with it, and if you don't know these tips, you're really missing out. Okay, the second thing that you should know is that practically every word comes with an audio file of how it's pronounced. Next to each word, you'll find a speaker icon. And if you click on that, you can actually hear a native Korean speaker saying the word.
다정하다.
And this will sound a bit different depending on which dictionary you're using. They're not all just the same. For example, here is how this word sounds if you actually use the full Naver Dictionary.
다정하다.
Now for this word, I prefer the full dictionary because I think it sounds a bit clearer, but you get the idea. And it doesn't have audio just for a few basic words. It has almost everything. So here is a Chinese idiom, for example.
7전8기.
In fact, if you don't want to listen to it, you can also just read it, which is what I personally prefer. It'll be written out exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced, so you can simply just read it or write it down. And I often use this feature because some words are read differently than you might think, so it's a great way to quickly just check how a word is pronounced without having to ask someone else. In fact, this feature is actually better than asking someone because a lot of words are commonly read incorrectly by native speakers. The third thing you should pay attention to, and most people miss this, is the little red stars next to each word. So let me show you with a new word. Okay, I'm going to search the word 선택하다. And if you search it, you'll see that it has 3 stars next to its name. And 3 stars means it's very common. So if you're wondering whether a word is used more often than another one, or perhaps which of 2 words is the better one to use, well, first just look at how many stars it has next to it. If we check some of our other words that we've done, you can see that they have a different number. And pretty much every word will have a different number of stars next to it. Now, if you find a word without any stars, it's probably rare and you might not need it yet. For example, if we click this word here, 고양이 고래, literally cat whale, which I've never heard before. There are no stars. So having no stars means it's not a common word at all. So if you were trying to just find the word for whale, which is just 고래, and you were to stumble upon this word somehow, well, you could know just by looking at the stars, or lack of stars, that this is probably not the word that you're looking for. The correct word again is just 고래, and that has 2 stars, so that would be the word that you should use. Okay, the fourth tip that you should know is the example sentences. Not that there are example sentences, but specifically how you should be using them when you're looking up words. Anytime you're seeing a word for the first time, I recommend checking the example sentences, which are a little bit below. So let's say you wanted to find the verb to print in Korean, and you wanted to print out an assignment. So you search print, and you find the word 인쇄. Now, 인쇄 does mean print, but it's not the word you want to use when you're just printing something out, like with a printer. But you might not know that, right? So what do? You check the example sentences. These example sentences do mean print on this one, but it seems to be more of a professional word, like printing things onto clothing or printing books, etc. You won't find any example sentences showing it being just used to mean like printing something out, like printing out paper for a class. So then what do? Well, you simply go back and you try the next word, and you'd find the word 프린트하다, literally to print. Again, before you just use it, check the example sentences. And this one will seem okay, so you could use that. So this isn't to say that that's the only word that means to print, or even that's the best one to use. Only you can know that from learning and practicing Korean. But at least it can show you, without having to ask a teacher or a native speaker, which words are correct and which words make sense in which situations. And in this case, this verb works perfectly fine for what you're trying to say, and you can know that because you've checked the example sentences. Okay, let's do one more example. This time I want to search for the medical term sinusitis. So we type in the term and it gives us 2 different words, and neither of those we've seen before. So what do? Again, check the example sentences. In most of these examples, you'll find that the word 충농증 is being used. And in fact, that's the word that you're going to want to use. Again, don't just search something and click the very first word that you see. Always double check using the example sentences. Okay, my 5th tip is to copy paste that word into Naver's search engine or Google, and then look at the image results to triple check that the word you're using is correct. I know this might seem obvious, but it works so well for looking up nouns, so anything that exists, because sometimes you might expect something completely different just by looking at a word's definition. For example, let's look up this word, 연탄, meaning a coal briquette. It says it means coal. And if you're from the US, like me, and you hear the word coal, you imagine those little charcoal squares? Well, in Korea, 연탄 is a big and round block of coal. So you could run into a problem if you were trying to buy the small ones and you ended up with one of those instead. Fortunately, a lot of times Naver Dictionary will even show you a photo directly under the word, but a lot of times there won't be, so definitely do an image search anytime you're not certain. Okay, now give yourself a pat on the back, because you can now look up any word in Korean, no matter how complicated it is. But we're not done, because my 6th tip is not about how you can search any word, but also that you can search any grammar form. Here's how you do that. First, don't just try to type the grammar form because it's probably going to think you're just searching for a word. First, put a hyphen and then start typing the grammar form. For example, if you wanted to search for the form 타니까, well, I would start with a hyphen followed by 타니까, and not only will it have a quick explanation of the form, But again, you'll find example sentences so you can check if that's the one you were looking for. I actually really like these short explanations on Naver because they're extremely direct. And while they're not usually useful for trying to learn something for the first time, they are especially helpful if you're reviewing concepts or if you just want to check your notes. Okay, but everything we've done so far has just been with the English version of Naver Dictionary. There are also a lot of things that you can do using the regular full Korean dictionary. For example, finding synonyms or rare words or looking up the etymology of words and a whole lot more. And you can find links again to both the English version and the full version in the description box below. So for my 7th tip, let's talk about how you can search for synonyms. So you can find word synonyms, so words with similar meanings, using the full Naver Dictionary. But first, you'll need to know the word 유의어, which means synonym. Now, these words, of course, don't have the exact same meaning, but they are synonyms. And if you were to check these words, also make sure to verify with their example sentences, and you can see that they'll have different uses. But it is useful to know which other words you could use instead. For example, if you're writing an essay or you're just trying to make your sentences sound more unique. But I think that you'll find these synonyms the most useful when you're actually looking up a new word. For example, sometimes you'll find a word that just has a confusing definition, but if you look at the synonyms, it will suddenly be a lot clearer and easy to understand. So combine this tip with the stars tip that I mentioned before, and you'll have no trouble searching for new words. For the next tip I have, tip number 8, you'll also need the full Naver Dictionary, and that is for etymology, meaning finding out the origin of words, often older sounding versions of words. This is so useful, and I think that you're going to use this tool also. Anytime you want to know, I wonder if this word is originally related to this other similar looking word, or maybe I wonder why this word is spelled this way. And knowing that can help make it much easier to learn new words in bulk. So say that you encounter 5 words that all seem to have similar meanings, and they all start with the same sound, or they have the same sound in them. That's a perfect use of this etymology tool. Let me show you an example with the verb 비싸다, meaning to be expensive. So here it shows the word origin. So this is an older version of how the word used to be written. And then if you scroll down a bit, you can actually read about where this verb came from. And in this case, it's a combination of 비, which is an old word that means price, as well as 싸다, which on its own actually used to mean like to be expensive or to be valuable. And now that's actually the opposite of what the verb means today, which is to be cheap. Now, the downside to all of this is that you have to be able to read Korean. One thing you can try is actually just throwing the definition into Papago translator to see if it makes sense. And a lot of times it will. Okay, my 9th tip is also related to this, and that is that you can look up 한자. Not only the characters though, and what they mean, but specifically the origin of 한자, where they come from, and my favorite, what they represent. For example, if we search the 한자 가, meaning house or family, we can find out that this character actually used to be a picture of a pig under a roof. Why? Well, that's because, as we can read here, cows and pigs were a very valuable asset, and keeping them in your house was a safe place to protect them from being taken. I mean, what kind of family doesn't keep a pig or a cow in their house? Am I right? Okay, well, keep in mind that a lot of these characters have ancient origins, and Naver is great for that because everything that you could ever even want to know about any word is right there. All right, we've talked exclusively about Naver, but for my final 10th tip, I also want to give a shout out to another dictionary you might not know about, and that's the Korean Learner's Dictionary, which I will also link in the video description box below. This one is a lot simpler to use, but on the other hand, it provides significantly less information. Sometimes though, if you're looking up a large list of words and you're pressed for time, or say you're just trying to read a comic in Korean and you're not really trying to study, if you just need the translation of a word really quick, this is another reliable option you can try. Another one that I've heard a lot about and I've used sometimes is Daum Dictionary, which is like the Korean Learner's Dictionary in that it has less information, but it's also a bit easier to use and has a cleaner interface. But no matter what dictionary you decide to use, it's important to know your options. And if you end up using the Korean Learner's Dictionary most of the time, or whatever, just keep Naver Dictionary in mind as well in case you're not able to find something that you're looking for. Okay, before we finish, I should also note that Naver Dictionary looks a bit different on a mobile phone than on a browser, but overall the information is going to be the same. The app has really improved over the past couple of years, so check it out again if you haven't tried it in a while. So, what dictionary do you use, and do you have any other tips for how to get the most out of it? Maybe something I didn't cover in the video today. If you do, let me know in the comments. And also, if you liked this video and you would like to see more, please give this video a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.